Shut up and sit down.
Vanakkam friends, I'm Simon from Nerd Safari, and if you enjoy our videos, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell thing. That would be very kind of you. So last night I was lucky enough to go see KGF Chapter 2 in our local premiere of the movie. I then released a no spoilers review, and honestly, I was going to leave it at that. I really enjoyed the movie to the point where I just didn't feel like releasing spoilers was the right thing to do. But then when we released the no spoilers review, we had so many people say to us, hey, I want to talk to you about the end credits scene, I want to talk about this and that, and I want to know your thoughts on it. And then I spent the whole night just laying awake thinking about what happened in the movie and thought, you know what, I've got to come back in the morning and release a spoiler review. So in this review, there will absolutely be spoilers. I'm going to walk through the entire storyline of the movie from start to finish and tell you what I thought about it. So this movie starts a lot like the first movie with the mother and Rocky. And it doesn't necessarily change the storyline between Rocky and his mother, but it builds upon it. So in the first movie, we see Rocky's mother sadly dying of cancer, and her dying wish to him is that he not die in poverty in the same way that she does, that he has dignity and becomes a wealthy man. In the second movie, we see a lot more of a focus on gold, and there's a whole conversation about, do you like gold, mother? And her saying, yes, every woman loves gold, but much more a focus on specifically gold than just wealth. And unfortunately, for reasons sadly that I think all of us know, we have a new narrator telling the story, and in this case it's the son of the author from the original KGF Chapter 1 movie. But what struck me from the moment the movie started was the scale. Suddenly, within the Kalar goldfields, you see 1.5 million people all with torches. You see the scale of the goldfield just seems bigger. And you see that Rocky's actually been building up KGF and building houses for people. And are those people happy? I don't know. I mean, clearly they're still eating radish curry every day of the week, but they're eating. They're no longer slaves. They are being treated well, and they have a ton of loyalty for Rocky. But this movie doesn't glamorize life in the Kalar goldfield. It still seems like a very harsh environment to live. The other thing I loved at the beginning of the movie was Rocky gives a speech about merit to the other gang bosses, and his message there is, I reward people for the hard work they put in, not because they were born into a position of power. And he's really speaking to his growth from someone who was born into poverty, who was essentially a nobody, who's fought his way up through the streets to this boss status. And he's really looking for people that have been on a similar journey to him, not those people who were just born to a rich family or to some gang bosses themselves. Early on in the movie as well, we hear the gang bosses talking about the fact that the only person who could defeat Rocky is another Rocky. And there's a lot of debate around, is it even possible to have another Rocky? I think we find out with Adira later on that there's a lot of similarities there. The other thing that we see from Rocky early on in the movie is his saying that people are not permanent, positions are permanent. And what I like about that is he means that not only do people come and go, but also things change. And we see that with Vanaram very early in the movie. We see Vanaram was this loyal captain of the guards for Garuda and was saying that he was going to kill Rocky with his bare hands. Very, very quickly, Rocky literally gives him a rifle, and Vanaram chooses not to shoot Rocky, but instead to serve him. And Vanaram becomes one of the most loyal lieutenants through the rest of the movie, which I thought was incredible. We also see the romance aspect revisited, and at the beginning of the movie it feels very similar to KGF Chapter 1, that Rocky's advances on his future wife are not necessarily desired, that she's not a big fan of Rocky. She's kind of pushing him away. At one point she's threatening him with a gun, and there's a lot of comedy and chemistry between the two of them that feels really fun. Now, next up, we suddenly hear that this area of the Kalar goldfields where Rocky has been working is called 3x9, and Rocky ascertains that that means there are actually 9 gold mines within the Kalar goldfields, and he's only known about one of them, so he very quickly opens up the other 8 goldfields. And then we roll into this moment where our old friend, the blind man, is back. And as the other gang bosses are starting to conspire against Rocky, he gives an amazing speech where he tells them, you better not mess with this guy. And all of a sudden, we roll into one of my favorite songs of the movie, Tufan, which just speaks to Rocky's power as a boss and his swagger. Now, Rocky is not just swagger. We see him at this point actually working in the mines, shirtless, hammering away at the wall. He's not just using these people to mine the gold for him, he's out there working on his own. And I think that's another way that Rocky's character is different to the other crime lords. He gets involved. He feels like he's one of the workers, not above them. But then, of course, we see the main villain of this movie. We learn about Adira, this uncle of Garuda's who was obsessed with Viking culture. And you can see that in him. His hair's braided and shaved at the sides. He's got tattoos. He's wearing full armor and he has a Viking sword. The guy looks terrifying. And they talk about him being dead, but will he be back from the dead? Well, of course, in a heartbeat, we suddenly find Adira is back from the dead, walking through fire, just a terrifying character. Now, I love the next sequence. We have an amazing car chase where Rocky is in this great Ford Mustang. The car just looks as solid and indestructible and badass as he does, smashing his way through the Jeeps, shooting their drivers in the face. Really, really cool car chase sequence with lots of impact and slow motion. Then it just moves straight into a physical fight, and he's fighting people on motorcycles. Looks very, very much like a scene from the first movie. However, what turns around, the twist, of course, is that Adira is waiting there with a sniper rifle and shoots Rocky, what looks like he shoots Rocky in the heart. My theory, though, is he's an incredible sniper. He knew exactly where he was shooting Rocky. It was probably in the shoulder or something, causing a ton of physical pain, but no permanent damage. And just to demoralize and destroy the spirits of Rocky's people, he sends Rocky back, humiliated and injured. And you can see Rocky's agony. Like, is it emotional agony? Is it mental agony? And at that point, everything starts to unravel. We see Rocky's supporters in the mob, poisoned, like the Game of Thrones Red Wedding, all just dying around a table. We see lots of Rocky's gangs just gunned down in the street. And we see Rocky's Kalar Goldfield trucks hijacked and destroyed by Adira and sent back full of bodies. And the message is very clear that Rocky has failed his people. These people that had loyalty in him, he's let them down. And it really feels crushing, like the sadness within Rocky as he sees this happening all around him. So then we see Rocky do something weird. He goes on vacation. And the question is he really abandoning his people and going on vacation? Or how does a tiger hunt? Does a tiger just jump on its prey? Or does a tiger go stalking through the tall grass, working its way in, sneaking up on people? And that's what Rocky's doing in this place. He actually goes to meet with some Muslims who he makes very clear that in my country we respect all religions. And there's this amazing moment with the Kalashnikovs where you see Rocky suddenly eliminating all of his competition in India, and then his Muslim friends have no choice but to work with him. And all of a sudden, Rocky's swagger is back. You start to believe in him as a character again. And then you have this amazing moment, which just makes me emotional even thinking about it, where Adira's trying to hijack the gold trucks from Kalar Goldfield. Rocky steps out with all the swagger in the world. And then, of course, somebody screams Kalashnikov, and Rocky's trucks are full of not gold, but his army with Kalashnikovs. And they absolutely decimate Adira's men. Adira is injured. He somehow survives a rocket launcher, but he's humiliated himself. And just as he sent Rocky away as a message, Rocky does the same to Adira. Just says, "Get out, I'm sending you away." And then we have my favorite song of the entire movie, Sultana, Dira, 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 Dira. Just amazing song. And it tells a story of Rocky going back to where it all began. He's back in Bombay. He goes back to get revenge for being betrayed. And you see all these flashbacks with Rocky as a boy versus Rocky as this emperor in the modern day. It's just amazing moments. Now, the movie could possibly have ended at that point, but instead it skips 3 years into the future. Ramika Sen is now becoming Prime Minister and just is on the warpath for Rocky. She's essentially a dictator who is just doing what she wants with the Indian government. But on the other hand, we learn that Rocky now has an army of 1.5 million people in the Kalar goldfield, so he's also a force to be reckoned with. Now, one of my favorite moments in this last part of the movie is when the police get hold of one biscuit of Rocky's gold, and you just see his obsession with that gold at one point. He goes into the police station, they learn who he is through his original name, and then they just terrified give him back this piece of gold. But it's not enough for Rocky. You can see his fury building, and he has this gun that was originally called the Big Mama. Of course, by the end of that scene, it's called the Big Daddy, and just destroys this police station. But that's a moment where you start to think, is Rocky becoming cruel? And if so, if Rocky is becoming cruel, what does that mean for his character? Like, where is the grounding force? And of course, as ever through these movies, the grounding force, the moral compass for Rocky is his mother. And we have these flashbacks which then lead into the song, which in Kannada is called Gagana Ni, which is just such an emotional song. If anybody had dry eyes watching that scene, you're a stronger person than I am, because seeing Rocky's mother telling him this story through the years was so emotional, and the beginning of just an incredibly emotional last half hour. So, of course, from Rocky's mother, we then go to Rocky getting married, and it starts to feel like Rocky at this point may have the possibility of a more normal life. That he gets married, and there's this kind of funny scene where his wife's saying, "Oh, I didn't really eat anything today," and he's like, "Well, go eat something." And she said, "Well, look, I'm craving sweet things," and people are starting to think, wait a minute, I know what's going on here. And he says, "Go to the market, I'll buy you the whole market of sweet things if you want." And then she utters the words, "Mother is coming," meaning, of course, that he's lost his mother, and that's been the theme through these entire movies, and yet she may be reborn. His wife may become a mother to take that place because she's pregnant and having a baby herself. So you see this incredibly poignant moment between the two of them where everything comes back to Rocky about what's important in life. It's not just about the gold, it's not just about his gangs or becoming the emperor. His wife becoming a mother is incredibly important to him, and you see it in his face. But then the most horrifying moment of the movie, Dadira, on the top of a hill with an old rifle, somebody's testing the wind by sprinkling some dirt. He fires. Now the question is he firing at Rocky's neck, as you see in his sights, or is he intentionally killing Rocky's wife? And my theory is Dadira is an incredible sniper. There is no way that he missed that shot. I think he intended to kill Rocky's wife just to create that final conflict. He is desperate for revenge against Rocky, and he would do anything to cause that to happen. So I think Dadira killed Rocky's wife intentionally. And that, of course, leads into this unbelievable match between Yash and Sanjay Dutt, between Rocky and Dadira. The sword against the hammer. And you see Rocky just beaten to a pulp by Adira. You see Rocky absolutely bloody, blood pouring down his face. He's been hit with this sword. He's laying in the dirt. And then the moment that absolutely broke me emotionally was when his hand sinks into the dirt, grabs, and I'm getting emotional even just talking about it, grabs the handle of the hammer. He rises up through the dirt, and it's Rocky from the first movie. Rocky, who posed as a slave, who infiltrated the Kalar goldfield, and then rose up against the slave drivers. Just seeing him with that hammer again, smashing Adira's sword in half. And it's not easy for him. The fight is still on. Adira is still strong. But Rocky is just driven by this passion, by this fury, by the love for his wife and child who he's lost. And there is no way that he's going to lose that. And again, I thought the movie could end at that point. But then we end up with Rocky driving off for this showdown, we think with Ramika Sen, but actually with the person who's been instigating this, the puppet master behind everything through the entire two movies. Now, I wondered, as Rocky was driving into Parliament and there's an army of people there, some of his, some of the enemy, I wondered if this was setting it up for KGF Chapter 3, but then we end up with Rocky sniffing out the traitor, killing him, and then going off on this boat, and we know what happens next. The heartbreaking moment as the boat is shot down, the Kalar goldfields are bombed, and as the first movie began with Rocky being born as the Kalar goldfields were being discovered, the second movie ends with Rocky dying as the Kalar goldfields are bombed and destroyed. And again, if there was a dry eye in the house watching that, you are stronger than me, because I was crying like a baby at that point. But then we get to the end credit scene. Apparently Rocky is wanted by the CIA. They're looking to bring him to America for justice, and we find out that he's been committing crimes all over the world. And then a book moves, and there's another book underneath saying KGF Chapter 3. What does that mean? Does that mean Rocky didn't really die on the boat? Was that fake? Was the boat really carrying all of his gold? Maybe the gold was somewhere else. Maybe that the piece of him sinking into the water with the gold was a flash forward to his death in KGF Chapter 3. Maybe he went on adventures before that to America, and maybe we're going to have flashbacks to what he did there. I have absolutely no idea. I would love to know your theories, but first of all, tell me two things. Do you think Adira actually meant to kill Rocky's wife, or do you think he was aiming for Rocky? Do you think Adira was that low and that corrupted by power that he would kill a pregnant woman, or do you think it was a mistake? And secondly, tell me what you think about what this means for KGF Chapter 3. Are we going to get a KGF Chapter 3? Is it going to be a flashback to Rocky's adventures in America? Is it going to be a sequel to KGF Chapter 2 where Rocky didn't die on the ship, didn't sink into the water with his gold, and that was some kind of a trick to fool everyone while he disappeared into anonymity? I don't know, but I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. Well, I hope you enjoyed this spoiler review and breakdown of the movie. As you can see, I had a great time watching it. I hope you did as well, and I would love to know what you think about it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon, friends, on the next Nerd Safari.